In WWE's mind, they're trying to tell the fans, well, Sting lost at WrestleMania, so now he wants to get his revenge. He wants to get that win. He wants to beat the Authority at their own game, and what greater way to beat the Authority than to take the World Heavyweight title out of their position. So in that regard, I can understand it, but they didn't do a good enough job to set that up. So hopefully, like I said, we have a few weeks before Night of Champions, and they can tell that story and set it up and make it believable and understandable for fans why Sting is coming after Seth Rollins and the WWE World Heavyweight title. Right now, it was just a great moment to sort of get lost in, but they do have to sort of set up a better story to get fans even more intrigued. Right now, they're excited. They're happy just to see Sting back and to be used. I mean, here's a guy who hasn't been used since WrestleMania. We know he doesn't have that many matches left, as you pointed out, to his age. Russo said, oh, maybe he didn't look good or maybe it's not believable. But that's the thing about wrestling.
Well, he went by the age factor.
Well, it's not believable because, Sting's an old man and blah, blah, blah. They did the same story, when Brock Lesnar took on CM Punk at SummerSlam. Brock Lesnar is a monster. He's a freak of nature. CM Punk,
yes.
A smaller guy, independent wrestler. He has that stigma of being the indie guy. He's not big, all flash and muscles and bulking like Brock. Brock's a world heavyweight athlete. Again, a legitimate UFC fighting champion. He's got the credentials in his NCAA wrestling background. He is a monster. Brock Lesnar should run through anyone who's smaller than him, from Daniel Bryan to CM Punk to whoever, Kofi Kingston at that Tokyo show in Japan. So Brock Lesnar is a beast. It's not believable for a smaller guy to beat him, but that's the beauty of wrestling.
JJ, I think I do have to interrupt you. I believe we do have a special guest here on King Jordan Radio. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe we have a former WWE Tag Team Champion and Hall of Famer. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Road Warrior Animal. Good evening, Road Warrior Animal, and welcome to King Jordan Radio. How are you?
Man, it's always a pleasure to be on King Jordan Radio. I can't wait.
Okay, let's talk about
I couldn't help overhearing the conversation about a small guy beating a big guy.
Mm-hmm.
And to be quite honest, I kind of feel the same way. It's just not, in the eyes of the fan, it's just not believable.
Yeah.
Not all the time, and unfortunately, in the other wrestling federations or the wrestling federation, but that's what you see all the time, and it's just not comprehensible. I mean, when you get a guy that's way smaller than Ryback, and then Ryback always is doing these jobs, it's just not. It doesn't make sense for the wrestling business, because you got to think like the fan does. The fan goes to work every day, and he sees that, and he walks by a small guy, he's got confidence, he walks by like a big guy, and he goes, holy crap. And that's life. And when you start doing it too much, people don't buy it.
No, there's no question. Now, Mr. Animal, when did you get yourself inducted into the Hall of Fame as the Legion of Doom, a.k.a. the Road Warriors?
2011.
2011. Now, take us back to that night. I know your friend and partner was not with you. Bring the audience back into that situation and tell us what was going through your mind that night.
Well, I mean, it was a surreal situation, man. I mean, Hawk and I were lucky. I mean, you're not going to see any more teams come into the wrestling business like Hawk and I did. We are champs since day one, and we won all the championship titles you could win if they're a tag team in pro wrestling. And our business is that to be a champ means you're putting butts in seats. And
right.
When we were in Atlanta, it was a great night. I mean, it was freaking loud as hell, and of course that's where Hawk and I started Georgia Championship Wrestling together. And besides having to stop talking and hearing the LOD chant go on and on and on, it was phenomenal, bro. We had to stop. Our talk lasted an hour and it felt like 5 minutes. And one of the big moment that was touching, of course, and I say that, as a road warrior, touching. It sounds kind of funny, right? But was when Paul Ellering pulled out the Hawk action figure and put it on the podium.
Oh, yeah.
And that's where I lost it. I mean, I started crying like a baby because, we could feel his spirit flying around that room. And then you had, 20,000 people start chanting, Hawk, 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 And so it was great there, man. It was, it was a tribute. I mean, Hawk and I always wondered, even when he was alive. I mean, heck, we should have been in the Hall of Fame already. But for whatever reason, they waited until that night, and, and it all worked out.
JJ, let me go to you to the next question.
Yeah, I mean, that's what a really touching and moving moment, especially the last few years. We think of some of the guys we lost, like a Randy Savage, finally in the Hall of Fame, the Ultimate Warrior in the Hall of Fame, and the Legion of Doom, Road Warrior Animal and Hawk, easily one of the greatest tag teams of all time. As you pointed out, it didn't matter what company you were in, you quickly rose to the top, holding titles, defending them, putting butts in the seats, fans loving you, hating you. They just were into the Road Warriors and watching you guys just destroy the competition. And you guys are in several Hall of Fames. Of course, a lot of WWE fans seeing the WWE Hall of Fame is just very special. Everyone has an opportunity, whether they see it on the USA Network or now on the WWE Network or on a DVD, a WrestleMania DVD. And it's a very beautiful thing. You guys also in Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame, NWA Hall of Fame. I mean, the credentials that the Road Warriors, the Legion of Doom, you call them whatever you want, just what an unbelievable team. And I can say I did have the privilege of meeting Hawk once before he passed away in 2003. I saw him at a signing in Chicago with Paul Ellering, and just what a cool guy, man. Really down to earth. He was just a real genuinely nice, telling, some old stories. Traveling with, of course, you and Ellering and just some of the crazy stuff that happens on the road. But,
yeah.
You guys are just two of just the all-time greatest and best. And the Hall of Fame is definitely a great moment.
I appreciate that, man. Those are nice words, and Hawk and I take those kind of words, and we always have modesty. We always told everybody we were just two normal guys with a weird job. I mean, and that's what we did. And Hawk and I were Hawk and I. We never had to rehearse promos. You never had to have us read off a teleprompter. You never had to do any of that because Hawk and I knew how to feed each other, feed off each other, and that's the way we just did business, I mean, it was kind of crazy when I think back of it. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were talking about some titles. I said, do you realize at one time, I said, I was a Mexican champ, an Australian champ, and we took the international belts out of Japan and defended them against the NWA belts. I mean, no other tag team has been able to take tag team titles out of another company and defend them against other companies. And to be honest with you, they should. That's what will make this wrestling business a shoot. You battle other companies, and battle over the belts. But you'll never see that happen. You'll never see that happen again. I think the thing is, when you look at Hawk and I at the time, even today, because I still work out all the time, I can still wrestle today if I wanted to, but it's not the same. It's not the same without Hawk. We were so far ahead of our time. I mean, we were so far ahead of our time. We were like the modern day Ryback back in 1985. We were already, I was already 300 pounds and 10% body fat and mauling people, doing flips and everything else. And I think when people start seeing us do stuff that the Rock and Roll Express was doing at 300 pounds and 275, they're going, holy crap, And it's just one of those things, it comes along every once in a while, man, like a Walter Payton did with football. He was out of there. Deion Sanders came and, was phenomenal, way ahead of his time in the game, and we were just kind of one of those game changer kind of guys, the right discipline, motivation, listen to the guys that were ahead of us and respected that. And, the number one thing is respect, and respecting what your craft is. Yeah. And respecting the fan. If you don't respect the fan, man, you lose the fan.
Yeah, you're right. The fans are the most important thing. Now, I want to bring you back to the late 80s, early 90s, with all these great tag teams. You had the Orient Express, you guys, Demolition, the Bushwhackers, the Powers of Pain. I mean, the tag teams were just superstar thing. I mean, at times the tag team division would outweigh the heavyweight division. Talk about the transition from when the tag team started to fade in the WWE, at least, maybe WCW to a lesser extent, but overall, how did you feel like when the tag teams, became what they became? Everybody would, be separate, unlike the 80s and early 90s.
I tell you what it was at the time. It was a testament to Hawk and I. Here they are separating all these other tag teams up, and they couldn't do that with us. And you got to remember back then, we were considered the Hogan of tag teams. So you could put Hawk and I against Demolition or put us against the Four Horsemen, and we're going to sell out in that. We're going to sell out that arena. Mm-hmm. You can't do that today. There's not one tag team today that you can put in the main event and say they're going to sell out. Even in the UK, even in places where wrestling doesn't go, you can go to Kuwait and Bahrain, and a tag team is not going to sell out your building.
You're right.
I say that modestly because it's a lost art in our business, man. And tag team wrestling is a great art. And, some of those great teams, unfortunately, are suffering because today. But, yeah, you're right, man. Back, WWE, WWF, they never really liked tag teams anyway. I think they're trying to build them up again now to get something going. And it's kind of, I don't even want to say halfway work because it's really not, because people don't even buy into the primetime players or New Day or any of those guys. I mean, the Usos were good, and then they kind of fizzled them out. I mean, they're really not doing anything, and which is a shame, man, because it's not the guys themselves. They have all the talent in the world. It's the way they promote them, or actually they don't promote them. Is the issue,
right.
But then, I kind of, it's hard for me to talk about this kind of stuff because we were one of those teams that never needed to get promoted. I mean, we were self-promoting. I mean, we did our crap in the ring, said our interviews, self-promoted it, and, like the idea when we did the Skywalker's match with Midnight Express, to do those pumpkins off the scaffold. I mean, that was our idea. That was our idea, to throw those and say, hey, we'll paint Bobby on one and Dennis on the other and watch their head explode. I mean, who comes up with that stupid stuff? I mean, we were so out there. We just came up with stupid crap, and it worked, And they don't let you do that anymore. You got a group of writers that tells you what to do now, and you got to do it.
Okay, JJ, go ahead with your next question.
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, like the Usos, you got two brothers, two guys who came in together. As you pointed out, you don't really see a lot of teams coming into the business together. They're guys who are being paired up in the Performance Center. They're kind of signaling and changing guys in and out, seeing what works and what doesn't. And the fans kind of see that. They see that, that there's just not a lot of belief in the tag team division. Not a lot of seriousness, the way, as you mentioned, the way they promote these tag matches. They do kind of feel like they sort of become, I hate to say it, kind of like the new Divas match, where it's like, oh, there's a tag team match, it's not that special, let me see what else is on. Or the fans don't really clamor for those exciting, tag matches that they used to see when the division was hot, when you had amazing tag teams. Like you pointed out, the Four Horsemen and the Road Warriors. I mean, you guys practically invented the War Games. I mean, it was just unbelievable. Who would want to miss the Road Warriors and the Four Horsemen, two of the greatest of all time? I mean, it was a very exciting time. Times have changed, and hopefully, as you pointed out, you can see the WWE is trying. If I have to give them a little benefit of the doubt, they're trying. They've just brought back Team 3D, the Dudley Boys. They're trying to give a boost to the division. The Dudley Boys are as believable as a tag team. They've been tagging for almost the last 20 years. Hopefully, this creates a boom. Hopefully, this creates an interest in tag team wrestling. Do you think it will?
It might, man. Listen, I respect the Dudleys. They've always had great respect for Hawk and I, and Devon is phenomenal. If Bubba can get out of his way of his own ego, they'll be great. The thing is, you can't go in there and say, I mean, and I'm saying this modestly. Anybody goes in a wrestling today and says we're the greatest tag team of all time, they should be shot right there, because it's not going to happen. I mean, I mean, you got to let the fans vote that out, and they voted over time and time again, and they voted for Hawk and I. Not that I care now after being retired. I don't. I hope there's a tag team that comes on and gets voted the greatest tag team. But the fact of the matter is, and the honest truth, there isn't, right? I hope they build a tag team division. I mean, because it's a great, I think it's fan entertaining to the fan if you get it done correctly. You know, and you're right. You just can't throw some Johnny-come-lately together. Hawk and I grew up in this business together. I mean, started in this business together. The Usos, they should have done the whole nostalgia of the Usos, man. From bringing Samu and Fatu and the Usos and the Wild Samoans, they should have had all that. But they don't talk about anybody like that. It's like they don't want any past history in this. I mean, to say that the Usos are derivative of the Wild Samoans, come on. Wild Samoans were another great tag team that was overlooked, you know? I mean, and that's it. They really need to let the tag teams take loose. See, the thing is, the fan knows what they want, and they have to feel it. If the fan doesn't feel it, you cannot shove it down their throat. You got to give them what they want. You know what I mean? And if they're buying something, like for instance, when you see Hawk and I enter the ring, all we would do is look at the fans, and they would erupt. We didn't sit there like cheerleaders, say, stomp the ring, let's go. I mean, the fans will tell you. And when you have that, you got to take advantage of it. Okay, perfect example, Dolph Ziggler.
Yeah.
If they were to put Dolph Ziggler and Joe Henning together, you know, Curtis Axel, are you kidding me? They both look like Kurt. They both walk the same. They wrestle the same. They would be a phenomenal tag team together, but you know what? They will never do it. It's what natural in this business that they should do that nobody ever does. You know what? There's a new company getting ready to start up. I don't know if you guys heard about it. It's called Revolution. It's going to be based out of Las Vegas. It has nothing to do with Jeff Jarrett's company. This is a new company. Owner's Bill Townsend. Roddy Piper was a part of this company before he passed away. And this company, and I'm going to be involved in this company, is all about bringing back the 70s, 80s, and early 90s brand of wrestling, where you build names, you build characters, you build a guy. You're not building the brand, you're branding the athlete. And you let the fans believe in who they want to believe in, and, you know, it's going back to basics, and that's where our business needs to go. It needs to go back to basics. We are building great tag teams. We are building great lineage of, you know, of other former athletes, you know, that have passed away, that, you know, we're taking some family members, and we're taking care of second and third generation guys, not just throwing them by the wayside and giving them a stupid different name. Use their real name, man. Use they're related to. I mean, why wouldn't you call Joe Henning Joe Henning? It's Kurt Henning's freaking son. He walks like Kurt, talks like Kurt, looks like Kurt, looks like Kurt and Larry Mix. I mean, use his name. That doesn't make any sense to me, you know. So you can't overlook, and that's why I come back to part of insulting the intelligence of the fan. The fan knows. The fan knows, and the fan's smart. When you start disrespecting the fan, and this is a little bit where Lex Luger lost the fans a little bit, because Lex would insult the intelligence of the fans sometimes in his interviews. You can't do that. That's why when Hawk and I, you know, I'm sure you remember laughing at your TV set, when I would say something like, hey, you, put down the potato chips, put down the beer, get your butt in the gym. No, but I would say that in a promo because you know why? Because there was a guy watching TV, eating chips, drinking a beer, saying he's a tough guy, but not doing anything about it. You know, that's when we were healed. And you know, you got to say things that people relate to and they can, you know, and respect. You just can't overlook them all the time, man. Your fans are your number one priority, and the reason when you start losing them, you lose the business. And this new company is all about the fans. They're doing a Roddy Piper Memorial Training Center. They're doing everything. It's going to be based out of Las Vegas. It's going to be a great deal, man. Get ready to launch here in, you know, end of October, November sometime. And it's going to be a good thing, refreshing for this business, you know. So
before we proceed, I just want to mention that you will be in Queens on September 12th at the Holy Cross High School located at 26 Francis Lewis Boulevard. Yourself, Tommy Dreamer, the FBI, Danny Demento. So you're coming back to the Big Apple here in New York City. Your thoughts on working in the New York City area?
Bro, who doesn't like New York City? I mean, come on. I love the Queens area. Hell, I've had a lot of great times, a lot of crazy times in New York City. I love Queens. You got to love the fans in New York City. I had some great memories beating the Nasty Boys for the WWF titles in the Garden, which was
SummerSlam '91.
Oh, bro, it was one of the most electric matches I ever had, and it was in New York City. You know, we had a Chicago street fight, beat the crap out of each other, and people went nuts. And you know, I mean, seriously, even myself and Hawk were like little kids when we won the titles, man. We felt the energy of the people, and we had goosebumps, you know, and you know, and that's the kind of electricity that New York brings, man. I'm glad to come back to Queens. I just want everybody to know in the Queens area, man, at the Holy Cross, I'm bringing my spike shoulder pads for the fans to wear in the ring. They can wear them, take pictures. I mean, I bring them once in a while with me. I'm bringing them to New York City so the fans can put them on, to take photos, have a good memory of something fun, and you know, take something home good with them, you know. And you know, I look forward to them. I can't wait, man. I love New York City. I always have. Like I said, I used to go to Brooklyn quite a bit. We had a bunch of friends in Brooklyn. We did some stuff with the Police Athletic League there in Brooklyn and did a lot of things. So even went over to Garzulio's in Coney Island to eat some good Italian food.
Oh,
so,
okay.
I mean,
I'm 5 minutes
yeah,
from there.
Man. So, yeah. So we've actually more Hawk than myself. Well, you know, a friend of mine, George Napolitano, is a photographer.
Oh, yeah, and Blackjack Brown.
Well, one of his relatives owns John's Pizzeria in the Village. So we go to John's Pizzeria. That's another thing I'm looking forward to. I cannot wait to get some East Coast pizza.
There is nothing like New York.
There's something in the water. Yeah. In New York, they say it is the water. It's the water with the dough, man, and the pizza's great. So I'm going to come there, eat myself a whole big 16-inch cheese pie, and then go to the event, meet some great fans, bro, and sign some autographs and have a good time. You know?
They are the best, but I got to ask you, about a month ago now, I think it is, WWE released Hulk Hogan, fired him. Hulk Hogan's team and lawyers said they quit. Obviously, he didn't know he was being taped. I've heard a lot of different opinions, Animal. One party said they had it. One party said, look, you know, the WWE is a bunch of hypocrites doing it. A lot of black former wrestlers came out. Virgil, I believe Farouk, some others said Hogan was never racist. And the other thing is that he was talking in private, and the other thing he was talking about it with his daughter. Now, I don't commend anything he said, but with those caveats, what is your take on the Hulk Hogan situation?
Well, first of all, I mean, you're right. What a person says in the privacy of his own room is his own interest. There had to be some reason why that guy released the tape 8 years later. So there must have been a business deal going bad somewhere, because I know Hogan and that Bubba were in business together. And so I know something had to go bad for him to release that tape, you know. So it must have been some kind of bribe thing. Second of all, listen, I'm a firm believer. I don't care if you're black, you're Mexican, you're white, you're Chinese, you're Japanese. You have to respect the culture. And I know one of Hogan's defenses was, well, geez, the black people call each other the N-word all the time. Well, you know what? If in their culture they want to do that, let them do it. And the reason I say that is I have a part owner of a mining company over in West Africa, Liberia. I have 180 black employees. And however they talk in their native language, I have to respect, because I'm a guest in their community and everything else, right? And so, and in that fact, Hogan should have respected that. And what he says, I don't condone it all. I think it's wrong. He shouldn't have said that. But then again, in the privacy of his own home, probably full of emotion. Listen, I know you, both you guys, myself, have said things that probably weren't on the up and up in our own house. You know,
that's the whole thing, right?
And we regret it in the long run. We look back and said, God dang, I shouldn't have said that. I'm an idiot. I mean, we've all made that mistake as grown men and as young kids. And with Hogan, I think the WWE letting him go like that is absolutely absurd. You take him off your website, you take him out of your Hall of Fame. Are you kidding? There wouldn't be a WWE without Hulk Hogan. And that's a fact.
Yeah,
there wouldn't be a WWF, WWE. There wouldn't be Road Warriors. There wouldn't be nothing if Hulk Hogan didn't do that movie with Sylvester Stallone and became so huge that he made Hulk Hogan into what it is in a branding name, which made the WWE. So I think it's hypocritical, right? Listen, you're going to get mad at Hogan for that, but you're going to have 4 Mexicans go down to the ring and they all wear masks. Stereotype.
I mean, yeah.
You're going to have the.
Let's face
you're
it.
going to have the.
Look what the Ultimate Warrior said when, God rest his soul, but the things he said on his videos about gays and this and that, and I mean, they brought him right back with no problem.
Yeah, and you honor him. You honor him, and heck, I mean, I knew Jim. Jim used to dance for parties before he got in the wrestling business. Warrior did. So. I mean,
is that
I'm
true?
not going to. Yeah, I heard it from a very reliable source. But nobody's going to damn him. They're not going to judge him. You're not going to judge him for it. Same way Hogan should be judged. Listen, the WWE sends the Mexicools down to the ring on John Deere tractors. Are you kidding?
Yes.
Talk about hypocritical. And you do that to the poor Mexico guys. How about promote the Mexican guy like he's a top dog and a great member of his community and running to be senator instead of being a guy who cuts your lawn because he's Mexican? I mean, it's a fine line, and I don't think Hogan should have been taken off their website at all. Listen, I realize it's a business.
Should have been suspended.
Should have been suspended with a fine, maybe, something like that. But listen, it was a bad mistake. Another black eye on the wrestling business. It shouldn't have been done. But at the end of the day, when you look at Hulk now, this happened 8 years ago. When you look at Hulk now, he's got Bible-verse tattoos on his arm and everything else, and he's a different man. And I've never known Hogan to be prejudiced, ever.
And you compare that with what's going on with Donald Trump today. He told a Latina reporter to go back to Univision, and there's a big outcry. And he's saying that in the public's eye. I mean,
that's the guy and that's our guy running for president.
And he's running for president.
And he's in the Hall of Fame. So why would you blast him, leave him in the Hall of Fame, but you take Hogan out for what he said? It's double standard at its best. It's, I don't know, man. I just think they got in trouble in the past with the Benoit stuff and everything else, so they're so gun-shy with everything that, they do stuff like this.
Well, Benoit you could understand a little, right? That's a little different.
Oh, yeah, listen, I knew Benoit. I knew Benoit's wife very well. I knew her a long time before I knew Chris. And everything else. And, listen, Chris is a good friend of mine, and what he did was absolutely horrendous. But it doesn't take away from the fact that he was one of the greatest performers in our business. You can't ignore that. So you can't pretend that he didn't exist and never was in the WWE just because he did what he did. It's double standard.
No question.
But listen, my heart always goes out to their families. I mean, that's a horrible thing, and I think Hogan just was a victim of circumstance, and to be exiled like that, I think they were looking for a reason to get rid of him anyway, to be quite honest. That's why the punishment was that harsh. Yeah, the punishment was that harsh. There had to be some bad blood along the way somewhere.
Wow. Okay, JJ, let's go to you for the next question.
We had just mentioned before in your start in the early 80s in Georgia Championship Wrestling. How did you come into contact with Paul Ellering, and when was it decided that you guys would be working together and he would be your manager?
Good question. I think we lost the animal.
Oh, no.
Really? JJ?
I'm there. You guys there?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Yeah, no, Ellering was a Minnesota guy. Hawk and I were Minnesota guys at the time. And Ellering was already working for WCW, Georgia Championship Wrestling. And Hawk and I knew of Paul because Paul was a junior national championship powerlifter. I mean, he was a 750-pound deadlift back in 1976. I mean, he was so strong ahead of his time. So we knew of Ellering. And watching AWA when we were younger kids and everything else, he had this big feud with Jesse the Body Ventura, so we knew of him. So he was in Georgia Championship Wrestling, and Ole Anderson called us in and said, listen, what do you guys think about putting Paul Ellering with you? We're going to put him with you. Hawk and I said, great. and then Ellering and I and Hawk talked. He became a literal manager for us. Undifferent than a lot of managers in the wrestling business today. He booked all our flights where we didn't wrestle for the big company. Like if I was working for the NWA and we would go wrestle in Montreal, he'd call Montreal, book the flights, get our pay, and get everything done, and then pay us. It worked out slick, man. Wow. Paul is one of the reasons the Road Warriors did as well as we did. I mean, he did a lot of tutelage with us and sat there and wrote up different high spots and matches. Like Animal, you're here. Hawk, you're here. Animal, you go to the early guy in here, and Hawk, you drop down and you kill him. You know, I mean, he helped us out a lot with ring psychology. Paul was a great mentor and a great teacher, man. Probably one of the greatest guys I've ever known.
A great manager too. I mean, he was intense. He definitely was intense. Another guy that passed away is another icon, I should say, Randy Macho Man Savage. Talk about your memories of Randy. I know you probably worked with him in terms of with the roads and everything, because that's your era. So if you could say a few words about the Macho Man, that'd be great.
Well, you know, to be honest with you, Hawk and I never wrestled Randy.
Really?
Yeah, it was one of the guys we never wrestled in because, I mean, I've seen him in Memphis a few times and stuff like that. Unfortunately, and this is a rough story, unfortunately, I got involved with Randy after Elizabeth just left him.
Wow.
As a matter of fact, I was with Crush of Demolition and Randy in Berlin, and wow. And I'll tell it on the show. I almost killed Randy over in Germany. Literally beat the crap out of him because he pissed me off so bad. I mean, I liked Randy, don't get me wrong, but Randy's savage almost almost meant a different meaning to him, you know, because I was about ready to plant him myself. I mean, God rest his soul. But I heard some good things about Randy, though. I mean, he ended up good place in his life. Found his high school sweetheart and got married, and I was going to get ready to get married and everything else. And that part was great, and you know, the true love story theme. But you remember I had with Randy? I'll tell you a good one here. Here we are over in Tokyo, Japan, getting ready to wrestle at Kirken Hall, and he's wrestling Ric Flair. Hawk and I had just got on wrestling the Japanese tag champs. Now we were working for Japan, and it was Japan and WCW were there. Well, WCW guys got mad because Hawk and I got dressed in the Japanese locker room, and everybody else had their own locker room. We just had that much respect with the Japanese people, so they brought us in their own locker room and treated us like one of their own. We couldn't help that, but when you're over in their country, you don't argue. You say, okay, we'll come there. Well, anyway, Hawk and Randy had a situation where Randy had said something to Hawk's wife at one time. Hawk kept it secret and kept it under hats for about 4 years, and finally asked Randy in Tokyo. Randy basically called Hawk's wife a liar. Well, next thing you know, Hawk slaps the glasses and the hat off of Randy's head.
Wow.
And while Ric Flair is standing in the ring with his music playing, waiting for Randy to come down to the ring. Randy's music played like 3 times, and he finally went like, well, finally, you know, you had Fujinami waist-locked Randy, and, you know, and Saito got in front of Hawk and said no. And Hawk literally waited outside for Randy for about 20 minutes in the rain for Randy to come outside, and Randy wouldn't go outside with Hawk, which is good for Randy because it would have been a short night for Randy, but then quick because Hawk looked like a mule, you know. But yeah,
and it was beef. I heard with Randy and Hogan in some of the aspects you're talking about now, in terms of Hogan and Macho Man. Did you hear anything?
I heard there was heat there. Man, but I never knew anything about it. You know, I didn't know what was going on, and you know, man, some guys in this business, bro, they get a little bit narcissistic. You know, they start thinking that everything is real in their life and things are real what they're doing. It's not a good place to be.
Okay, another tag team that I thought was underrated, but they could always go. I thought was the Killer Bees. Give me your thoughts on the Killer Bees, B. Brian Blair and Jumping Jim Brunzell.
Well, Brian Blair was a great wrestler in the ring, and Jimmy Brunzell I knew better because I knew him out of Minnesota. I mean, heck, Jimmy used to come into some bars that I used to bounce in Minnesota when I was still 18, 19 years old. Yeah, the Grandma B is the spot where Rick Rude and I and Hawk and Henning and Nikita and everybody worked at Barry Darsow. We all worked at the same bar, and Jim Runzell used to come in every once in a while. Jim Runzell was a high jump state champ, but a national champ for University of Minnesota. So that's where he got his name from. And Jimmy was great. Boy, he could jump and drop kick, and was the high flyers with Greg Gagne that did great in the AWA, won all those tag team championships. And he and Brian Blair were a great team. I never got to wrestle them, unfortunately. I wrestled Jimmy and Greg Gagne, but I've never got to wrestle the Killer Bees.
Okay, JJ, go. Your turn.
Well, back in the 90s and during the WWE height of the Attitude Era, and the Road Warriors made their return to the WWE, and Paul Ellering was actually against the Road Warriors, against the Legion of Doom, and he was partnered up with DOA. I remember the WWE released a DVD of the Road Warriors, and Ellering was quoted in saying that it was very odd and very difficult to be paired up and work against you guys. I mean, what was it like to work with him when he was on opposite sides and you had to sort of do promos against each other? What was that like?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I hated the Attitude Era. I thought it was a waste of time. I hated the waste of time in wrestling. We didn't need it. If you would just quit doing the bra and panties match and doing stupid matches, the people would have came back to you. They had no problem. But the problem was they were insulting the people and beating guys like Hawk and I and different other guys that people were going, oh, that's crap. And and that's what they decided to develop they developed the Attitude Era. Well, in foreign part of the Attitude Era, you don't help run the company today. So and that's just the way it is. It's kind of funny, the Attitude Era, and you got 4 guys running things that are in WWE today because of that. And that's just, that's just a bunch of crap. And I hated that idea with Ellering against us. Unfortunately, you're under contract. You got to do what you got to do. But just think of how great it would have been if they would put Ellering with us, and we would have ran through every tag team there and been in the champs again. People would have bought it and loved it and believed in it. But they didn't believe Ellering against us. That's why Hawk and I never turned it against each other when they wanted to. We said the people never believe it, that we're not doing it. And we never did it. So it was a bad idea, bad mistake. I thought it was bad for business, bad all the way around, just as bad as that stupid frickin' Rocco we had with us too at one time. It was some stupid bad ideas.
Yeah. There's been plenty that we're still trying to figure out to this day. But one person I think you definitely know is the Icon Sting, who came back last night on a Raw. And I'll tell you, Animal, he still looks great. Give me your thoughts on the Icon Sting.
Well, I thought that Sting's comeback last night was better than his WrestleMania comeback, to be quite honest.
Mm-hmm.
Sting showed a lot of fire. He looked great. Mm-hmm. He looked like Sting, firing in the corner, throwing a chop punch, chop punch, chop punch. Hey, I wonder where he got that from. Hawk and I used to do it all the time, especially Hawk. But it's no different than the Warrior got his press and dropped him behind him from. I did that way before the Warrior was in the Warrior. But anyway. But yeah, man, Sting looked great. He looked good. That's the way he should have looked and should have been acting, and I like it. Unfortunately, I think it's probably about 10 years past when Sting should have came to WWE. You know what I mean? If he'd have come 10 years ago, he'd have blown the roof off the place.
Ooh.
It's just it's just one of those things, and it's got to be hard, man. Sting's 2 years older than I am, and I'm retired.
Wow.
Man, he's 2 years older than me.
One of the oldest.
Yeah, he's one of the oldest. He's definitely the oldest guy in the company working. I'll tell you that right now. But hey, good for him. I'm glad he did it. But again, guys, look at the product. You had to bring Undertaker out of retirement to wrestle Lesnar.
Mm-hmm.
You got to bring Sting back as a main eventer. What is wrong with building the young talent there, man? There's something missing when you got to keep bringing the other guys back to be in your main event.
And this is the same company that said, they used to do those skits about how Hulk Hogan and Macho Man were too old to work for the WWE. But now you fast forward to 10, 20 years later, you have Sting, who's old, the oldest guy there, Undertaker, who's very old, and it's the old guys who's controlling the buy rates and stuff.
Bro, Sting's got to be 56, 57 years old.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
yeah.
Hogan's in his late 60s. So, I mean, you can't tell me you get too old in this business. The people want to see what they want to see. And when you give them that, look how happy they were last night. They gave the people what they want to see, and they were happy.
Yeah.
The people left happy. They love Daniel Bryan. He's the most over guy there in the company, is Daniel Bryan.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
He's great. He's great.
There's one guy that I think could have worked in your era is Brock Lesnar. He is a man that I look at, and give me your thoughts of how it would have been of him in the late 90s, the late 80s or the early 90s with Brock Lesnar and Hogan and Warrior.
Bro, I would have put paint on Brock Lesnar and made him the third Legion of Doom guy. Seriously.
Oh,
really?
That's what a badass Brock is. Yeah, Brock's a true badass in life.
He's true.
And you know, here's the thing. Hawk and I, and not pumping our own horn, but Hawk and I were two badasses that tried to wrestle. Not like two wrestlers trying to become badasses. You know what I'm saying? So it was natural for us, and it was a natural thing. I mean, all we did was bounce and collect and do stupid things when we were younger. You know, stuff that we're not proud of, but it helped us for our gimmick. And Brock is that same mold of guy and character. And what happened? What happened anyway at SummerSlam? I didn't even see the match with me and Taker. I heard Taker won.
Yeah.
JJ, tell him.
It was a bit of a crazy finish because Brock had Taker in a Kimura lock, and then the timekeeper rang the bell. The referee did not. The timekeeper early rang the bell. We thought the match was over. The ref waved it off, saying, "What are you doing? I didn't call for it." So there's a bit of confusion. Brock Lesnar let go of the hold, Taker, while the ref had his back turned to Brock. Taker low-blowed Brock and put him in a triangle choke, which he calls the Hell's Gate. And then Brock refusing to tap out, he passed out, and the referee called it. Then, based on the replay, the referee was out of position. So when the timekeeper rang the bell, it was because, from the timekeeper's perspective, he saw the Undertaker tap out from the Kimura armbar, but the referee did not, so the match continued. And then Brock refusing to tap from the triangle choke, then the ref called it, saying that Taker won. So it was a bit of confusion. A lot of people weren't too sure what happened.
Yeah, I mean, because there's no way. I love Taker to death, don't get me wrong. I mean, Hawk was instrumental in helping Taker with his first promo and stuff, you know, and the look, but there's no way. I mean, Brock should be the man. Brock should be murdering everybody in that company right now. And, you know, ride the wave with Brock Lesnar because he's the most believable thing you got in the company.
Yes.
That's my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, he's worth every penny that they invested. And just to let everybody know, you're listening to Road Warrior Animal for a few more minutes here on King Jordan Radio. Animal will be in Flushing, Queens on September 12th. And he's also mentioned that he has a new promotion that he's involved with. Why don't you mention that again? In Vegas?
Called Creative Wrestling Revolution, man. Called Classic Wrestling Revolution, and this Revolution for short, and it's going to be great. It's going to be based out of Vegas. The owner's name is Bill Townsend. Get great guys involved, like, you know, Shane Douglas, you know, is involved in it. You know, the franchise.
He's great on the mic, Shane.
Yeah,
one of the best guys on the mic.
Former world champion. You got other great guys involved, which I cannot name yet, but it's going to be great, man. Bringing wrestling back to basics, and it's going to be good, bro. I mean, it'd be kind of wrestling that the people in New York City would like. I'll just tell you that. You know what I mean? So it's going to be a good time, man. Good venture.
Vince Russo, your thoughts on him?
I
never know where this is going to go. Okay.
Yeah, Vince Russo didn't really help Hawk and I out in any way. I don't really think he even liked Hawk and I in tag teams, which shows you where
he was there in '97 when you guys came back in that Manhattan show, right?
Yeah, and I think they tried to bury us. I think eventually, you know, at first in the Manhattan show they wanted to beat Hawk and I, and I went to Vince and said, "Why? You want to beat us?"
And that was a big surprise.
Kidding me? Yeah,
it was a big surprise.
the fans got a standing ovation, and we did the interview in the stands, and the fans went absolutely crazy. You know, I mean, that was electricity. That stuff you can't put a price tag on or buy a ticket for. That stuff was nuts. That's how crazy.
And they've tried to make the Godwins look like they could even wrestle with you, which was totally unbelievable to see that the Godwins, with all due respect to them, I mean, come on, they put situations that shouldn't have been put, and I'll just leave it like
you know,
that.
back then, Hawks had played with a lot of extracurricular activities, and so a lot of that was hand slapping and punishing us, at the time, trying to force us with teams. So I mean, well, hey, we stuck with it. We tried to be businessmen all the way until it just got to be too much for us, man, and whether. You know, we got lied to about pay and the different things like that, and where we had to pull the plug and leave. You know, I mean, it was what it was. Hawk just got fed up after SummerSlam in London, England.
Absolutely. Okay, JJ.
We were talking earlier about how things are organic and how it's more believable when the fans are kind of into it as opposed to being force-fed and scripted and all these writers kind of telling wrestlers what to do. Do you feel that things are a little too scripted today? Should wrestlers have a little bit more freedom to have a little improv or to feed off the fans and see the directions that the fans are leading them towards as opposed to them just telling the fans where they should lead towards?
Yeah. Well, I mean, pick Roman Reigns, for instance. Mm-hmm. Looks great, everything else. They got some idiot telling them what to say on the promo cards. Yeah. And, you know, I heard him one time on TV say something like suffer and succotash, which is what frickin' Sylvester the Cat says on Tweety Bird. Yeah. You know, I mean, what does that have to do? What does that have to do with wrestling? No, seriously, I'm serious now. Here's a guy that comes from a great Samoan background. If he were getting jumped and getting screwed over and everything else, why wouldn't you let him bring his cousins, the Usos, and stand ringside? Why wouldn't you have Alpha and Sika? Why wouldn't you have The Rock? You got to bring in your relatives that are popular in the wrestling business. They overlook all that stuff and they write stupid things for him, right? And it's about building the WWE name and not building the guy. This is where this other company is about building the guy, which in turn will build the brand of the name. And you got to build a guy. Like, look, think back. You had the Koloffs, the Four Horsemen, the British Bulldogs, Demolition, Hawk and I, the Hart Foundation. Nobody told any of us what to say. And we all made it huge. You know what I mean? That is the problem. Let the guy grow and let his inner personality come out, which the fans like. Because everybody's got an alter ego. You got an alter ego. I got an alter ego. Let that alter ego come out and have fun with it. But they don't, man. They keep everything generic and scripted and, you know, cookie cutter, and you're seeing what you're seeing.
Do you remember when you were in Canada teaming up with Stone Cold Steve Austin and Ken Shamrock, I believe, against the entire Hart Foundation? And if so, what are your memories of that? That was a very loud crowd into that whole Hart Foundation angle.
Oh, yeah, man. Well, you know, anytime you got the Hart Foundation in Canada, they're going to be stone cold baby faces. But the funny thing is, I'll tell you a funny story. When Hawk and I first went to the WWF, he says, we got to educate the people on you guys. They don't really know who you are up here in the Northeast. I looked at him. I said, are you kidding? I said, put us against anybody who wants it. He put us against the Hart Foundation. They were the champs at the time. Hawk and I got the loudest standing ovation when they played our music against the Hart Foundation you ever believed. And that was our first time wrestling on Coliseum Video.
Really?
We had a great match with them. It was just a tag team match, but we had a great match with them. Real similar to the match in Canada, where we got a great reception from the Canadian people. You know, we even went in Calgary and got made Mad Hatters of Canada in their hometown. So, I mean, the people loved to see us there. They loved the Hart Foundation. It was a great match. Of course, you know, we were with Stone Cold, which is phenomenal anyway. And it ended up being a good match, man. I mean, you know, anytime you're in a main event, it's a fun time because you're putting butts in seats. You're having a great time with other main event guys, and you all feed off each other. You feed off the energy, feed off the fans' energy, and you just go. I'm going to have to run
Absolutely.
pretty soon here, guys. I got another call I have to do. I'm going to have to run here soon.
One more question from me, Jay and JJ, and then we're going to say goodbye to Animal. He's been kind enough to join us here tonight. But JJ, why don't you give him your final question, and then I'll give him my final question.
Well, I will say, Animal, it's a great honor and a privilege to get the opportunity to talk to you. And I know we mentioned some of the guys you didn't get a chance to work with, like a Savage, and you didn't get a chance to work with the Dudley Boys with Hawk. But I know in TNA you did get at least an opportunity to wrestle the Dudley Boys, teaming up with Rick Steiner. What was it like teaming up with a fellow tag team sort of brethren like Rick Steiner, obviously from the Steiner brothers with Rick and Scott? What was that experience like?
Well, it was great, man. You know, I got a call late in the game there. I wasn't even ready for it or nothing, but, you know, the TNA called me up and said, you know, Scotty Steiner had gotten injured, was in Puerto Rico and couldn't fly when he tore his lat, and so they had me fill in for Rick Steiner. The only crappy part was it was that stupid six-sided ring that they use, which was a waste of time, and it's a joke. Thank God they're not going. They cut their thing on TV, so we don't have to watch that ring anymore. But anyway, but you know, getting a ring with the Dudleys, who paid great tribute to Hawk when Hawk passed away. They both had armbands on that said Hawk. They were very respectful guys. They were good. All the guys in the ring, of course, it's great tagging with Steiner. Although he literally broke my neck in Japan one time. I never got it fixed. Fractured my C6 on a power slam. But yeah, man, it was great, man. It was a good match, a good time, and you had a bunch of good guys in the ring, and it was pretty awesome.
Okay, last question from me, Animal. If you could go back, your fondest memory in any part of wrestling, whether it was your first match, your last match, you're winning the titles, what was the moment that Animal will look back and say, you know what, I'll always remember that moment for as long as I live?
Well, there are two that are very, very similar. Okay, probably the top dog moment will be SummerSlam 1992 in Wembley Stadium in London with 90,000 people.
Yes,
that was the
good.
Craziest night. Music's playing. Harleys are going. I can't even hear the music of Harleys because the British fans were chanting, you know, LOD. And you heard the LOD so loud from 90,000 people. There wasn't one person that didn't scream it. I couldn't even know if the motorcycles were running. I couldn't hear my music. Yeah, it was so deafening. Then number two was probably Madison Square Garden, winning the titles against the Nasty Boys. Was another
91.
great event because that was freaking awesome. The people in the Garden were huge. And another close three with the Garden was wrestling at the UIC Pavilion in Chicago against the Four Horsemen. Any match we had against the Horsemen blew the roof off the place. And so, but that one in Chicago was pretty loud because that's a match, you remember, where we won the titles, but they disqualified us for hitting the referee and all this other stuff by accident. So, you know, it pissed the people off. But that was another great match, man. That was another good one.
Well, Animal, it's been a pleasure, and the fans will see you on September 12th, of course. Is there anything else that you want to plug before you leave?
My birthday, September 12th. My birthday,
Your birthday?
September 12th. I'm coming to Queens on my
birthday. Happy birthday.
Yeah,
wow,
go,
okay.
No, man, I'm just excited, guys. I hope I run into you guys out there. I cannot wait to see the great fans in New York City, especially in the Queens area. Come